about water and urban places. This is Ideanthro. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. Recently, a good friend and a colleague of mine from a local government in southeast Queensland asked a question that's well worth digging into. The question was, are saturated zone bioretention systems any more likely to be infested by the aquatic macrophyte typha, which is a little bit on the weedy side? Are they any more likely to be infested by the aquatic macrophyte typha than a standard bioretention system? This is a good question, and my short answer is I've never seen any evidence of it. Now, let's clarify. I've never seen any evidence of saturated zone systems being more likely to clog up with typha than standard systems. I have, of course, seen standard systems where something has gone wrong and it's ponding water. I've definitely seen those clog up with typha, but I haven't seen any evidence of saturated zone type systems being any more likely to clog than standard systems when there isn't something else going on with them. And also, on top of that, conceptually, I think we can explain why it's not likely that saturated zone systems are any more at risk of this than a standard system. So to get into this, we really need to address a couple of things. We need to address why might someone ask this question? So a little bit of context. Then what's different about a saturated zone system to a standard bioretention system? And then this will all come together and make sense. So why might someone ask this? Well, this comes from like a drainage and an asset management point of view. So typha is a species of plant that loves to grow in moist, boggy conditions. It grows in really thick emergent clumps. What that means is that where you have shallow grass swales and natural channel design types of systems that hold a little bit of water, so flat ones, we have those types of systems where you have scour or outlet pipes and where you have plenty of sunlight. So essentially you have plenty of sunlight and shallow moisture. Typha, if it gets in there, it is a really vigorous, quick growing plant, grows in heaps of density, and it can essentially clog those up and constrict them. And from a flooding point of view, that takes away some of the capacity of the channel or of the outlet or whatever the situation is, and it can cause some problems. It also, the other reason typha can cause some problems is, and I don't know whether this is actually true or not, but there's a perception, at least, that it's an allergen. I don't know whether it actually is an allergen, but there's a perception because you get these massive big swathes of it growing, and it's got this kind of impressive seed head that when it actually goes to seed and that can kind of float off into the air, it's the sort of plant that looks like it should be an allergen. Whether it actually is or not, I don't know, but local governments do, at least from time to time, get complaints about it for that reason. So we've got a plant here that's a bit of a pain in the backside. The other context here is that, look, at least from southeast Queensland where I'm from, probably at least other parts of Australia and maybe even other parts of the world, there are plenty of examples of bioretention systems where something else has gone wrong that's caused it to clog up, the most obvious example being sediment from house building sites ran off and clogged the surface of the system. There are plenty of examples of where bioretention systems have been clogged up by something inappropriate going on in the catchment. They've ended up with a little bit of standing water in them, and typha has come in and just filled up the whole system. So for those reasons, for the fact that typha is a problem and that from an asset management point of view, we've certainly seen plenty of systems end up with typha in it, it's a really sensible question to ask, because what we're saying when we say a saturated zone system is we're hearing the word, oh, wow, yeah, it's saturated, it's really wet, we know typha likes wet conditions, we've seen typha in bioretention system. It's a really obvious connection to make and it's a really obvious question to ask. So to answer it, we need to look at what's different about a saturated zone system and a normal bioretention system. So let's start at the top. The top of the system's just the same. We've got plants in it. We have filter media, it's maybe 500 or 600 mils thick. We then have a coarse sand here. This is where things get a little bit different, because in a normal bioretention system, we'd have about 100 mils of coarse sand, but in a saturated system, it's thicker. It's maybe 300 mils, can vary a little bit, but we'd have a thicker coarse sand layer. Then things get kind of normal again. We've got gravel at the base. We've got the under drainage pipe running through the gravel there. Things get a little different with this outlet arrangement, and then we've got an outlet pipe here, just like normal. What's different about this outlet arrangement is rather than just having the under drainage pipes discharge into the pit and having the whole system drain freely under gravity, we have some kind of upstand arrangement. In this case, I've drawn you a T-piece with a cap on the end here. And what that means is that any water coming down the pipe has to actually back up and flow out the top of this T-piece. And that creates a reservoir back into the base of the system. And that's the bit when we talk about a saturated zone system that is saturated. And that's the bit that's really critical to understand, is we're talking about a saturated zone at the base of the system, some 600 mils below the surface. The top half of the system is still freely draining. So in a rainfall event, it's going to start raining. We're going to imagine this saturated zone is empty to begin with. It's going to start raining, water filters freely through the filter media, through the coarse sand, gets into the bottom, starts filling the gravel and the pipe, but it starts filling up and up because it can't flow out freely here. So it starts filling up this reservoir, starts filling up, and it's only once we've got this reservoir, all this space in the bioretention system filled here, that you'll then start to get water surcharging out the top. So it keeps raining for a while, it's raining, it stops raining, you've got the last of the rain drain through the filter media under gravity, so it's freeing this back up, it's not staying saturated up the top, draining down under gravity, gets down, pushes out the last bit, and you get left with this saturated reservoir in the base. And then in the dry period that follows here, what you've got is essentially a giant self-watering pot, where this water that's in the base of it, can wick up into the filter media and keep it a little bit moister than normal, but not saturated. There's still plenty of air in here. It's just making it a nicer soil. It's just like a giant self-watering pot, where you don't have to be worried about it drying out as regularly, so the plants are happier. But it's not like when you have a giant self-watering pot, you don't suddenly just create a pond for your plants, right? So you're creating a nicer, moister condition at the top, but it's still not a wetland or a pond. It's still clearly freely draining soil with plenty of oxygen in and around it. And that's the difference here, right? This is why Typha is not any more likely to invade a saturated zone system than a standard system. Is because when Typha does get into a bioretention system, it's enjoying the moist, boggy conditions up at the top of the system here, a little bit of standing water above the surface and plenty of boggy conditions around its roots. And a saturated zone system is creating the saturation down the bottom and just a little bit more moisture here. But as you know anything about bioretention filter media, at least the way we currently build it, is that it's really quite a sandy mix, not the most hospitable spot for plants to grow in the world, and certainly not for an aquatic like Typha unless something else has gone wrong. So what we're doing is just making that a little bit more hospitable, but we're not making it really, really wet, really, really damp that the Typha's going to love. And that's why Typha, yeah, okay, sometimes you might see it in bioretention systems where something's gone wrong at the top, but you're not any more likely to see it in a saturated zone system where all the moisture's at the bottom. And that's it. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Before you go, our best episodes come from your questions. This knowledge base, these discussions that are Ideanthro, improve with your contribution. So if there's a topic, an idea, a concept that you would like us to explore, come and ask us. You know where to find us. www.ideanthro.com/contact. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and that place you get your good podcasts from. You know where to find us. We look forward to hearing from you. We'll see you soon.